arranging, overlapping, layering. Assemblage is where things are combined or placed next to each other in conversation, and these things might be found objects, found images, or various materials. It's the joining or arranging of different or disparate elements. I've used it in my own work in different ways. In Desert Window, a black and white painting of an image I found online is combined with a scuffed stainless steel frame. In Figure Ground, a painted linen mat sits on the floor next to a sheet of mirror-polished stainless steel. A bowl of oranges, perhaps the only time I've used real objects in my work, sits on the mat, its image reflected in the metal. This piece is comprised of two parts. The airbrush gradient is on polyester that's glued to the walls, and the flower painting sits across the space in the corner, joining the two walls, so joining the architecture in a way. It's great to move around this work, see it from different angles. And I did a series of Australian wildflower ikebana arrangements. The central images all found in a book, and the patterned abstract frames were worked out in collage of different coloured paper or borrowed from textile design that I manipulated and changed further. So I'm thinking about assemblage in two ways. Most simply as joining, where two things meet. They might be physically close, up against each other, or simply coming together by proximity, nearby to one another. What if they become one, form a hybrid? How can they become one? What would it look like? Placed side by side in a context with nothing else around, they're forced to be read in terms of one another. The space between them is charged. And then if you add further things into the mix, multiplying the relationships, you create a net of conversations. So you can create a tableau or a narrative. And if we zoom out, this is essentially what happens with artworks in an exhibition. It's a configuration of objects and images in a space. And this is a large concern in my work. I see the way things are in relation to one another as holding huge potential for creating meaning, but I'll talk more about this in the next video on context and installation. So if that's joining, my other idea of assemblage is layering, putting one thing on top of another. Strata, accretion, building it upwards. Earlier layers might be left visible or be completely covered. Maybe they're covered but are revealed in parts. Let's think for a moment of assemblage in terms of two dimensions, of pictures only, if we think of found pictures as found objects. Simply by cutting, arranging, pasting, stitching together different components, new images begin to form. And they're ones that you probably can't imagine. Cut from magazines, books, family photographs, postcards, pictures found online, the image is the found object. Bringing them together in the same picture plane within a frame does a kind of leveling. By using a filter, you can make them all more similar in one way to amplify specific differences. So you can guide the viewer to what you want them to notice, where to look. I was a bit stuck as to what kind of experiment I would do for this video. Working with the objects we collected on the walk is an obvious starting point. I really loved the linear things we collected. Pallet strapping, a guitar string, bits of cut wire, a pipe cleaner, a rubber band, and I've separated them out from the other objects. So even though I've chosen objects all alike, they're all linear, they are disparate. I like how they all hold a memory. It's like making a drawing using found line. You can work just like how you would with a painting, thinking about balance, color, weight, composition. Yeah, I like how light it is, insubstantial, and how it moves in the breeze. The objects or the lines become animated. I think it could be developed into something more, but I don't know, I feel like it's nothing really very original. There's a long history of artists making work like this. So I want to find another avenue to explore assemblage, maybe in terms of collage. So I went to the New York Public Library picture collection, which is, a friend told me about it. It's this really amazing archive, similar to, what would be like an online image search, but also extremely different. Everything's in hard copy. There are aisles and aisles of folders containing images of thousands of different subjects. And I thought this would be a good starting point for ideas, not really knowing what I was wanting to find. I looked up words of some of the objects I found, like hair, and ones related to a painting, like windows. And I also looked up wrought iron, and thinking about all the linear pieces or ways to join or assemble them, I looked up knots. And then thinking about painting and canvas combined with knots, I looked up hammocks. The weight of the canvas would make an amazing sail-like form. So I'm thinking about painting or canvas in terms of its object possibilities. Back in the studio, I began to play with a fairly free-form kind of arrangement with a piece of fence that I found on the street, thinking about how I might be able to weave into it. Its grid kind of refers to the warp and weft of fabric, of canvas. And the metal fence also reminds me of kind of cross-hatched lead pencil drawing. So I'm going to combine elements together using layering, different levels of opacity, playing around with line, with color, different weights of line,